Hi, welcome to Boot Camp. My name is Susan Halla, and I am the founder and owner of Make It Mid-Century. So I hope you've seen some of our ads in the magazine, and I'm here to teach you all about installing laminate. So I'm going to talk a little bit about plastic laminate and where it came from. It's pretty interesting that it's been around for a really long time, as you know, since it's been around in mid-century products from a very long time ago. What it is it's a lot of little pieces of pressed paper all pressed together under heat and pressure with epoxy in it. So that's what makes the plastic laminate. And here at Make It Mid-Century, we have a couple of different products featuring plastic laminate. What we've done is we've brought back the glitter laminate. So here I can show you, we have all of these different samples in multiple different colors, and we have different glitter types in here. You can get gold, you can get silver, or you can get gold and silver both. And we also have our newest product, which is Sparkle Star, which also comes in a multitude of colors. This time we really focused on pastel colors. And we have pinks, greens, blues, aquas, and yellows. And these products have our star pattern on them and also have glitter included. And again, you can do a gold, a silver, or a gold and silver. And we're going to see a little bit more of that because my practice piece that I have here today includes using white sparkle lamps. So I'm going to put these aside. So where can I use laminate? Most often you're going to see laminate on countertops, and that can be anywhere from in a kitchen to a bathroom, in your vintage camper or trailer. It can also be used in a couple of other different applications. It can be used in furniture. It can be used as the backsplash, and I'm going to show a couple of examples at the end of some of our customers that have used our product in their camper trailers, and they a couple of them used it in the furniture, a couple of them used it for backsplashes. We even had someone use it for door fronts. So it's really great, wonderful application, easy to clean up. There's just a couple of maintenance issues that we're going to talk about at the very end. So the first thing I want to talk about though is what kind of equipment do I need to install plastic laminate? So I'm going to talk about those first. First of all, you want to know about your safety requirements. You want to have either glasses that are not prone to breakage or have some sort of glasses to protect your eyes because we are going to be using high-speed router. The other thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need a respirator, more than just a mask, or you're going to have to do this outside because the glue that we will use is going to be very caustic and you don't want to be breathing that in. Next, you're going to need some way to apply the glue, and there are different types of things that you can use. You can use a chip brush, which is this kind of really cheap brush. Whatever you use, as much as I don't like disposable things, you're going to want it to be disposable because you're never going to be able to get it clean from the glue. So you can use a chip brush, but it's not my favorite because, especially because they're cheap, they tend to lose bristles. And if those bristles get into your glue and underneath your laminate when you finally press it down, they can show a little lump in there. My favorites are either using a foam brush, and you can use different sizes of foam brushes, or a foam roller. So either one of these is going to work great. Probably the foam roller is going to be your best bet for a large countertop. I'm showing a small project here today, so I'm going to use the foam brush. The other thing you need to know is that you can get other kinds of rollers, right? You can get rollers that you use to paint your walls, but the problem with those is similar to the chip brush, where those other kinds of rollers, the kind of lambskin or kind of that sort of roller texture tends to leave fuzzies places, and there are little tips and tricks where you can wrap tape around it to remove the fuzzies, but you don't get fuzzies from a foam roller, and it's much easier to apply with a foam roller, and they're inexpensive, especially since you're going to be disposing. That's good. The next thing you're going to need is what's called a J roller, or that's what I call it. This one has some heft to it because that's going to help you press down. You're going to be able to use it with two hands. That's why there's two pieces of grip section here, because you're going to be rolling with pressure to really attach your laminate to your substrate. The next thing you're going to need is a router. This happens to be a cordless router, a battery operated router, but you can certainly use a corded router. Any kind of router is going to work. And you're going to need, I have one on here, but you're also going to need what's called a flush trim router bit. And it's going to need a roller bearing, if you can see this on the end, a roller bearing on it. And we'll talk about why when we get to that point. This one that I'm going to use here today is one that I really like to use. If you can see, it's got a lot of scuffs and stuff on it because I've used it a lot. But it actually has a roller at the top and the bottom, because that means I can use it not only in my portable router, but I can also use it in my router table to be able to cut things with. You will also need some sort of a file. This happens to be a metal file that has all different kinds of textures on it. You're going to need something that has a very fine texture on it, and or you might find that using a just a foam piece of sandpaper. This happens to be a 120. That's going to work really well too, and that's just for settling down the edges after you're done with the router. You're also going to need glue. And this is the glue that I recommend. This happens to be Weld Bonds brand. I will say that the red label is the one that has a lot of VOCs, which is why you need the respirator. There is a green can that is a water-based version, but in my experience, it hasn't worked well for me. So I'd rather use my respirator or work outside and use this product. Now, your mileage may vary. You may find that you like the water-based version better. That is up to you, but this is the one that I recommend. It's the one that I use all the time. And you'll also need a paint key to get into your can. But the most important part is, how do I make the countertop before I actually put laminate on it? And for that, you're going to need some sort of a wood product. And these are what I recommend. So you're either going to use a particle board or you're going to use an MDF. And if you can see the difference here, the particle board has larger particles on it, while the MDF has particles, but they're very small and hard to see. But the beautiful thing about both of these substrates is they are incredibly flat, and that's really what you want for underneath your laminate, is something that is really, really flat. There are pros and cons to both. I tend to use a lot of MDF. It's really inexpensive. It's very easy to find. It works well with all kinds of shaping tools. You can cut them with hand saw, with a table saw, with a jigsaw, with a chop saw. I mean, this stuff cuts like butter with anything that you want to cut it with. I will say though too, this does create a ton of dust when you are cutting it, and so you want to make sure that you are using either a respirator or a dust mask when you're working with this as well. Same thing would go for the particle board, that it's going to create some dust, not as much as the finest dust that you're going to get with the MDF, but this will work for you as well. The one thing about it is that I think about both of these is that they are susceptible to water damage. So we will talk about this when we get to the section about sinks, but you're going to want to treat these specially when you get to areas that might be get in contact with water. And then you're going to need to cut out your piece of material. And here I have MDF. I'm making a small little guitar pick shaped table. And you're going to need to cut your MDF or your particle board, the substrate, to size. And there are a lot of different ways to do it, but if you look up on the internet how to scribe something to your wall, that's the best way to get a wonderful fit to the back of your trailer wall, so that, because nothing is ever square, nothing is ever perfect, right? So in doing a little scribe between the two and then cutting that out with either a jigsaw or any kind of saw that you want to cut it out with, you're going to get a great fit. The other thing that you'll notice here is that typically a countertop, this is 3/4 inch MDF, and typically a countertop is going to be more like 1.5 inches. So what people often do when they're making countertops is that they will take one solid piece for the countertop itself, and then they'll cut pieces that go along the edge of the countertop to make the front face that 1.5 inches thick. On here, because this is a small table, just the scale of it, the 3/4 inch is going to work really well for us here. It does pose a couple of problems for some things when you use a really thin material, and we will talk about that when we talk about joining. So many things we're going to talk about today. You didn't know you were getting into this, did you? The other thing you're going to need is your piece of laminate, and you're going to want your piece of laminate to be slightly oversized to what you have. So this, you can see here, I've cut it to be oversized where you can see a little bit of margin everywhere all around my MDF cutout. And like I said before, we're using one of our products. So this is our white sparkle lamb with both gold and silver. And it looks a little funny right now because it actually has, and it comes shipped to you this way, a plastic protective barrier on top of it that I like to keep on until I am done with rolling it and everything, so that in case your roller is older or has some scuffs or whatever, it doesn't leave any marks on your laminate, especially if it happens to be white. I will say that this is the same laminate that's installed right over here where you can't see it in my shop. We've had it installed here for probably a little over a year in the shop, and it's been great for us as a shop product. It again, it's mostly kitchens and baths, right? But there's other places you can use it too. What I like about it in a shop situation is that when I do glue ups, the glue comes off the laminate really easily because the laminate is non-porous and has a really smooth surface. All right. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to put a couple of these things aside because we don't need them just yet. And we'll get to putting these two things together. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my respirator on, and I will probably take it up and down so that I can talk to you. I don't necessarily recommend that when we're using this material, but I want to make sure that you can hear me okay. Also, make sure that the cartridges for your respirator are rated for volatile organic compounds, which is what VOCs stands for. This pink one from 3M is just for that. I'm already taking my mask off because I want to point out that plastic laminate typically comes with what's called it's a rough side. It is a sanded back, so you'll see some striations in it. It feels pretty smooth to the touch, but it's got a little bit of grippiness to it, and that's because it gives something for the glue to adhere to better. Now, some people will say that you need to scuff up your MDF because it is such a smooth surface. I really haven't had many issues with my MDF being unadherent without scuffing it up, so I'm not going to do that today. You may want to do some test pieces and do a little testing on your own to make sure that what you are doing works. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to point the camera down here so that we can see what I'm doing. Okay. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my container and I'm going to put my mask on back again. You'll be able to tell when I have my mask on because I sound a little bit like Darth Vader. I just used this earlier today, so it's glued itself on. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do is stir this up. Now, I just did a little sample earlier today, so mine is already stirred. Don't shake it, don't agitate it to put bubbles in it. Just go ahead and stir it gently with any sort of stir stick is fine. And all you have to do is you're going to apply a thin coat of the glue to the back of your laminate. and you're going to apply a thin coat of glue to the top of your surface that you're applying the laminate to. Now, I will say that MDF can be somewhat porous and it may soak it up. So I'm going to start with this side first and do the MDF first and apply my glue. And then by the time I'm done applying glue to the back of the laminate, if this is dry and is ready to accept another coat because it's all soaked in, then I can go back and do it. So it's really easy to apply. It's just like glue, just a little bit gloppier and thick. So if you can see here, it's starting to change the MDF colors. So you can see where you've been. Make sure that you get all the way up to the edges. Don't worry if you get a little bit on the sides, because we're going to talk about how you can finish the edges in a little while. Again, I'm teasing you for future things we're going to talk about. So we're just going to apply a thin coat here and just all the way around. I really like how the MDF changes colors so that you can really see where you've been, how it changes to demarcate where you've been. This glue is a little bit like glue sticks, if you're familiar, because it leaves these little strands. I don't know if you can see these little hairs that come off of it. Here I can see back at this tip, I've got a little bit that I didn't get here at the corner. But you can see a little bit perhaps that it's really starting to soak in along this edge. It's almost completely dry. So I know I'm going to have to come back here and do a second coat. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start on the back of the laminate first. So the laminate isn't porous on the back, only so much that it is ridged so that it provides a little grip to the glue. Again, you want to make sure that you get all the way up to the edges, even though you know that we have made this oversized, so the edges aren't going to matter. But still, it's just good practice. If you get up to the edge, then you know that the area that's going to go on your MDF substrate is going to have glue to glue in the right places. So again, just slowly brushing it on. You don't have to be pretty. Try not to get any places where it's super thick. We don't want to do anything that's too thick. And it also turns a darker color as we apply, so I can see where I've been and where I haven't been. All right, I think the back of the laminate is good. And there's only a couple spots that are still a little bit wet. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply a second coat over here to the MDF. Again, you don't have to be perfect. Just don't be too gloopy. You want it to be an even coat. Not too thin. You don't want to starve it of glue. Now, I don't think we could starve this of glue because we're doing a second coat. And that's why we're doing a second coat. But you also don't want it to be so thick. I've never done it so thick that anything presses out, squeezes out when we roller. But it could happen. I'm going back in a couple places where I see that some high spots. I'm going back and finishing that. So the next thing that we have to do is we have to wait about 15 to 20 minutes for both of these to tack up. What's going to happen is right now if I touch it, it's wet and it's going to come off on my finger. But it's going to eventually dry in those 15 to 20 minutes where you can still see it. It has a little bit of a sheen to it. But if I touch it, it's not going to leave any residue on my finger, and it's going to be a little tacky. So it's not tacky enough that anything's going to be problematic. Although, I wouldn't be doing your laminate work in a place that has active dust settling. But generally speaking, just let it go, let it do its thing, and we're back. So we're done with the glue. We can set that aside.
another thing that we need that I forgot to tell you about is we need some sort of sticks or dowel rods or something, because once this laminate, which has glue on it, sits on the MDF that has glue on it, it's going to stick right away. And we need to prevent it from sticking right away. This is even more important with a large piece. So we're going to set a couple of different lengths of some sticks down here. And what that's going to allow us to do is we're going to be able to set our laminate on here, kind of feel around, make sure that we have good coverage, we're not too close to any edges, and we can move this around because it's floating above where the glues are, so the glues can't stick together. So I feel I have to keep figuring this out. I feel pretty good here. So the first thing I'm going to do, and this is what you'll do with a large long piece as well, is you're going to start from the end, and I'm going to take the first stick out. And taking my J roller, I'm going to start rolling. And make sure that you get to the edges, but be careful. Don't try to edge, like go at an angle on the edge. You're going to crack your laminate off that way. I'm going to move this more to the middle so you can see a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make sure I get everything pretty firm. I'm still going to go over it again. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the next piece out. And I still have another piece in there, so it's not going to go all the way to the end just yet. And I'm going to start rolling down, making sure I get those edges, but not rolling over the edge. Then I'm going to take the next stick out, and I'm going to roll a little more. You can see, we just kind of keep doing the same thing over and over again. And then once I'm ready, take that last stick out, and we can really get some good, firm, oh, see? I about cracked the laminate there because I went over the edge too far. And you can hear the bubbles kind of coming out, although some of that may be this tape that's on the top. Just want to make sure that I've got good, firm adhesion everywhere, especially the edges. I did crack my laminate there, but it's right at the edge at the corner, so it's beyond where I have the substrate. And so now you'll see, there we are. It's really firmly on there. I can't really pull it off. But you'll see, as I said before, I didn't show you this right away. This laminate, you'll see it has a little bit of a sheen to it down here, but like my fingers don't stick to it. But man, when I put it against the other piece that had glue on it, it is stuck now. I can hold the whole thing just by the laminate. So now we go on to the next part, which is using our router to trim off the edges. So I'm going to go ahead and put these pieces away. And I'm going to get my router out. So we talked about this before, that your router should have a flush trim bit that also has rollers on it. Depending on how you're going to cut your laminate, whether you're going to cut it this way, then you would need a roller at the end, or if you're going to cut it this way, which I am, then you need a roller at the top nearest to the machine. So that's how the roller is going to, has the same diameter as the blade, the flush cut blade. And so you, whichever way you go, you want to make sure that that roller is rolling along the substrate. You want to make sure that your substrate is smooth, doesn't have any flaws in it, no bumps or little divots, because that's going to telegraph onto the edge of your laminate while you're using the router. So you want to make sure that's the case, that everything's nice and smooth before you get going. So because of the length of my bit, I'm going to need to carry it off the edge of my work table here a little bit. But now that
I have the glue all ensconced in the sandwich, I'm going to go ahead and take this off so you can hear me better. So I'm going to do my laminate cut my laminate with my laminate down, because I want to use this bearing, this roller guide on mine. And I'm going to have to take it off the edge of the countertop because I don't have enough room for the depth of this bit. I could put it up on something. I could put it up on blocks or something. I'm just going to use the edge of my countertop and go slow. You may want ear protection because routers can be loud. Do make sure that you have your eye protection on while you're doing this. And the other thing that you need to know while using a router is go slow. Don't let it intimidate you. Laminate up a couple of pieces of smaller stuff and just try it out for a while until you feel comfortable. The biggest thing to know is you want to make sure that this plate is always firmly against your against your countertop or your whatever your laminate top piece is, so that if you start to go sideways a little bit or a little bit this way, it's going to start making divots in the side of your laminate. So just make sure that you have it nice and firmly down on the top of the laminate. It's pretty easy to do, but again, just be careful, go slow, and you can do this. It's very easy to do. So I am going to put my hearing protection on, and I'm going to go ahead and router the edge. So you're just going to follow. And you can see here, it looks a little jaggy, but all of that is that I have this plastic on here still. So don't worry, it's really flush to the edge of my substrate here. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to keep going around. All right. Do as I say, not as I do. I did not wear a dust mask, but I should have because I was shooting a lot of stuff off here. But you can see that we have a very nice edge all the way around, but it's going to look really funny on this. Oh, look, see, one thing I like to do is I like to feel all the way around. Here's a little area that has a bump out that I forgot to get with my router. It must be a place where I stopped and started around the corner. So I'm going to go back and get that. But everywhere else looks really great. Again, it looks kind of funny because I've got this plastic on here. We're going to take that off in a second because that's the fun part. But first, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take this little bit off that I missed. All right. Now comes the fun part. We get to peel off the plastic. Sometimes it comes in sheets, sometimes it comes in pieces. And of course, because I'm recording this, it's gonna come off in pieces. Because that's how Murphy's Law works. All right, no, we're getting a little bit bigger pieces here. This is kind of like when you get to peel off the plastic on your electronics, and it's so satisfying. I wish this was as satisfying because it's kind of coming off a little bit awkwardly, but there we go. And I'm going to try to make a basket on the trash can you can't see off to the side. Ugh, I just missed. I banked it off the side. All right, so we have it all nicely routed all along the edge. It fits very nice. It feels great, but it is just a little bit sharp. So that's where either our very fine file or our about 120 grit sanding block comes in. So what we can do is you just want to file or sand down in one direction along the edge to take off just a little bit of that lip or that little bit of hard edge that happens with the router blade. So we're going to go all the way around. And it's just going to ease it down just a little bit. If you have any stubborn spots, you can use the file. Again, you're going to go down at a 45-degree angle, just kind of in one direction. And you're going to be able to feel the difference with your fingertips when you're done. You don't want to go back and forth, especially in an up motion, because even though it's glued really solidly, you're pushing that laminate and you're trying to make it delaminate if you push up. That's why we're always going to go down at a 45-degree angle in one direction, down. So now I can feel the edges and they feel great. So that is your basic how-to, but we're going to talk about a couple other things now. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to point that camera back up so we can see each other face to face, and let's go on with the next part. Okay, welcome back to my face. It's much more exciting. You get to see my expressions. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things you're going to encounter. One of the first of those things I want to talk about are sinks. So there are really two types of sinks on the market, and that's a drop-in sink and an undermount sink. So undermount sinks are the type that you often see in a granite countertop or a solid surface countertop, where the sink is actually underneath the countertop and the countertop itself extends over the lip of the sink. A drop-in countertop is exactly what it says. You have to cut a hole in your countertop and you're going to drop that sink in. And the sink is going to have a little bit of a lip that's going to sit on the edge of the cutout that you made for your sink. There are manufacturers, or at least one that I know of, that makes a product that allows you to put an undermount sink in a laminate countertop. I have not used it, and I'm also really wary of that because while MDF and its little brethren over here are great because they're nice and smooth, they're easy to laminate, they hate water. So I would always recommend using a drop-in sink, the kind that has the lip that goes over the edge of the countertop. But I'm also going to recommend that you do a couple other things just to make sure that nothing happens and you have a long, lovely life with your countertop. I mean, after all, there's lots of places and vehicles that have this laminate in it that have been there since the 1950s, 1960s, that have been there forever. So one thing that I like to do is take some marine grade polyurethane and go ahead and polyurethane the edge of any exposed parts. If you've cut out for the sink, do the little exposed edge around the sink with some waterproof polyurethane. Go ahead and come underneath a little bit. I find also if you are putting a dishwasher in, the dishwasher is going to go underneath your sink a little bit, and you're going to have a little bit of a 1-inch overhang of your countertop under a dishwasher. Dishwashers, they're supposed to really take all of the steam and water away, but especially if you open it early, you're going to get loads of steam up underneath here. So that's another place you may want to apply some waterproof or marine grade polyurethane is at a dishwasher. The other thing that you have to do when you put in a drop-in sink, and it will tell you this in the directions, as that lip where you're dropping it into your hole, you're going to go ahead and you're going to put caulk, silicone caulk all around the edge of your sink opening so that when you drop the sink on top of that, it smushes that, technical term, it smushes that caulk down and makes a nice seal around here. So that's your belt and suspenders on having sinks and laminate countertops, is if you use some marine grade polyurethane on those exposed edges at a sink, and you make sure that you put some silicone caulk underneath the rim here. If you want to go one step even further, once you drop in the sink and you have the caulk underneath it, you can even caulk a little bit around the sides of the sink, and that's your 1, 2, 3 way that you're never going to get any water that's going to infiltrate and swell your substrate underneath. The next thing that you need to know about, and it may not be as much of a deal in campers or trailers, but in case you wanted to also try your hand at doing this in your home, you may come across a situation where you need to join two pieces together. If you have an L-shaped countertop and you need to join those two pieces together, there are certain really important things to know with laminate. The first is, I'm going to actually grab my other piece here. If I have an L shape here, I want to make sure that I actually don't do a butt joint like this, or if I do, I need to have a seam right here. I do not want to run my laminate all the way across a joint, because even though MDF and particle board are very stable materials, they don't shrink and swell like other woods can, they still can a little bit. And if you have laminate that is crossing a joint in two different pieces of material, there's a possibility that a crack is going to form right where the underneath crack is in the substrate. So you want to make sure that your laminate is straight across here, and there is a butt joint here. Or the more popular way to do an L joint, and the prettier way, I think, of doing an L joint, is having them come together in a 45-degree angle. And when you do either a butt joint or a 45-degree angle, you're going to need something called a draw bolt. That's what I call it. So, and that's what many people call it, but I think there's other people call it other things. So it's going to have a little kind of round-ended piece on it. It just flows free. It doesn't have any threads on it, but then there's also going to be a nut behind that, and there's going to be one on each side. And what that is you're going to make this little kind of figure eight, in a way, kind of opening on either side of your joint. It's going to be a circle that's the same diameter of the round portion of the draw bolts, and a straight across part that you've taken out with a router, and another circle on the other side. And you can see here what happens is that that little circular part sits in the circular edge, and then the bolt goes across the bridging part, and then you have the nuts at the end that you then tighten to tighten up the section of those two pieces of countertop together. I will say this isn't the best job I've done here. I think this back bolt needed to be back a little bit further than I have it. So you can see that there's a little bit more of a line. But one thing that you are always going to have on a laminate countertop is a joint. If your laminate countertop exceeds this distance of laminate that you have, or if you have a corner, you're always going to have a joint. I know people are so used to having granite or having solid surface where they can have joints that have a special material in them and then it goes away. You can't really see that joint anymore. Laminate countertops are always going to have a joint in the circumstances if you have to butt up two pieces against each other or if you have a corner. There are certain products on the market. There is one product in particular. It's called Seam Fill, Seamfil, and they do have material that you can actually put in the seam. You're going to put tape on either side of the seam so that only the seam is showing, and you're going to put this seam fill in there, let it dry, buff it off. There'll be directions with it, and then peel your tape back. And that's going to help hide that seam, but it is always going to be there. You can never have a seamless laminate countertop. I will say that if you're using a white countertop, you can certainly always do the same kind of thing where you're putting some painter's tape on either side of the line, and then you can use white caulk and put it on here and kind of work it in. And once you have it nice and flush to the countertop, you can peel off your painter's tape, but it does leave a little bit of a kind of a rubbery surface on your countertop. And so then if you're sliding a glass along the countertop, it'll catch on that rubbery bit. You may just want to get used to seeing a little bit of a seam because it's a beautiful thing. You made it work. You made this whole thing yourself. You put in these beautiful bow tie pieces to draw your pieces together. Let it show. Be proud of it. I will say that I made this by using a drill bit that does, you can either use you can either use a Forstner bit or you can use some other round bit that's going to make these round holes for you. And then I used a router without the bearing on it to join the two to be able to fit the screw part of it in. But you can online find templates that have the whole kind of figure eight piece on it that you can use. Then you can use a router bit that has a bearing on it and ride against the template to actually cut out this shape. So you can look for those online if you have this issue and you want to be able to join two pieces together. So then, the next thing I want to talk about is what are we going to do with the edge of this thing? And I want to say that I reached out to a number of places and tried to get all kinds of different options for you guys to see, but unfortunately I didn't get them before I had to do this video. So I'm going to walk you through it, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm going to do to this guy to make it into a tabletop. So in mid-century, you would often see, and this is probably the first thing that you could do, you would often see the countertops would be finished with the same material, laminate, that's on the top, you would put around the edges. And that's easy to do. You just take your laminate sheet and you cut off small pieces, small long pieces of the laminate, and you use those the same way you did on the surface, where you put your glue on the back of the laminate and your glue on the top of the side of the substrate, and you let them sit, and then you're going to put them together. You're going to go ahead and you'll use your J roller, same as you did on the countertop. And you are going to have some issues with the sticks that we use to keep things apart. You may want to use sticks to keep it apart. So you may just have to put a piece of tape on that stick to keep it upright. You can, if you're not doing this in place, you could put your countertop up on edge, and then you'd be able to put your sticks, like lay your sticks there. But you want to make sure that they don't get attached too soon, because it is a little bit more difficult. You do want to cut your piece of laminate to be a little bit wider than the thickness of your countertop. So if you have an 1.5 inch wide thick countertop, you might want to do a 2-inch strip of the laminate, because you want it to be a little bit wider. And you're going to then do these little sticks on there, because it's a little bit harder over a long distance. If you get off by a little bit, if it just turned just a little bit over a long distance, you could really end up getting your laminate so off center on the far end that's why we put the sticks on there in between, because that'll allow you to have the opportunity to lay it down without it touching and making sure that you have enough that it's really centered on your countertop, all of that. So, and then you would do the same thing that we just did on this. You're going to use your router and you're going to route out the sides of the laminate there, and you're going to route out the side of the laminate here, and then you'll have a perfect little laminate edge that matches your countertop. Just like seams, with laminate, you are always going to see this, there's a little black edge, I don't know if you can see it, between the laminate and the substrate. So that little black edge is always going to show on laminate countertops. It's how you know it's a laminate countertop. So just learn to embrace it. Learn to love it. It's just what your parents did in their own house. But there are a lot of other options you can use, and you will have seen a lot of them in many places, and especially in vintage campers or trailers, you'll often see some sort of metal edging, and there's multiple types of metal edging, and I'll put some visuals in here for you. There are certain metal edgings that actually are a C shape that will wrap around your countertop, where there's a little bit edge on the top and a little edge on the bottom. And it just is more of a compression fit. There's nothing else that you need to do to make it hold on. Then there's certain types that are like a T shape, and the aluminum edge may have some striations in it, or they may have some seams or something cool looking on the edge. But on the back of it, it has a little piece that comes out at a perpendicular point to it in the middle. What you have to do then is you will route a groove in the side of your countertop, and you press that T molding in there, and you may have to persuade it a little bit with a rubber mallet. And that's how it's going to fit in there. It's going to fit in there in a press fit into that T slot that you've made. There are also edges you can get that are a flat piece of aluminum that have little holes in them for screws. And usually you can either use a panhead screw, which is the kind that has a little bit of a slope to the top and the bottom is flat. Or sometimes the piece of aluminum will have a countersink in it that is for the type of screw that has this type of a head, a countersink head in it. That's another type. If you want to get creative, there's other creative ways to do it. Here in our shop, what we've done is we actually used flat bar pieces of aluminum that you can just buy at any of your big box retailers. And you can either screw those onto the front of your countertop, or like we did, we actually used the same glue that we used to put the laminate on the substrate, we used to put the aluminum bar on the edge of our countertops. We did aluminum bar here in the shop because it doesn't need to look pretty, it needs to hold up. So it's about 1/8 of an inch thick. It gives a little bit more of a surface for, and we run 2x4s into the edge of it. It's not going to dent, it's not going to break the laminate, nothing like that's going to happen. So it's a little more utilitarian, but it still looks great. And then there's one more option that I really tried to get here in time. If you have seen the kind of slightly domed shaped adhesive tape that you can get in chrome to put on cars. They have that nowadays, and there are people that have used that to go around the edges of their countertops. And again, because it's made for cars, it has a really good non-denting surface, and it has just that little bit of curvature to it, which is kind of a neat little option, a neat little feature to put on the edges. The last thing you can do is there are either iron-on or glue-on edge bandings that you can buy, and you can buy them in all kinds of colors, and you can buy them in wood, and you can buy them in chrome finishes, and that's what I've got right here. I know this looks blue, but again, It's like our laminate at first. It's got a little blue bit of stuff on it to keep it from getting marred while it's being shipped, but it's nice and it looks like aluminum, but it's actually plastic. And I like this for things where I'm going to use that on this because this happens to have a pretty steep curve around the corner of the pick shape. And so I need something that's really going to hug those curves. And this kind of iron-on or glue-on edging is great for that. Now, some of them will, like I said, have a heat-based adhesive on the back of it. This one doesn't. And you just need to use an iron to iron that on. I would suggest going to, somewhere inexpensive or go to Goodwill or something and get an iron that you don't care about. Because if any of the glue seeps out of the edges and gets on the back of the iron, you don't want to be ironing your good shirts with that after you're done. And nobody who uses the iron in your house really wants to use it after you've used it either. This particular kind is actually the type that we will glue on. And again, we'd actually just put the same kind of glue that we used before, this Weldwood contact cement, and we would put it on the back of this. We would put it on the edge of the countertop. We're going to let them dry. Then we're going to press them together. We're going to use our J roller to roll them off. And this has a little bit of a lip on either side. You can see it's a little bit larger. This is, I think, a 1-inch piece, and this countertop is 3/4 of an inch. So it's going to leave you with a little bit of an edge. So one cool thing that you can get is this little thing called the Bandit Edge Trimmer. And what it does is when you put that edging on, you can actually set this on there and you can actually run it along the edge, and it's going to cut that flush to the edge of your countertop. And then you turn it around and you do the same thing on the bottom side. So this little guy, you can get them at your home centers. You can get them online. This is just one brand that I've seen a lot. There's other places out there that have them. If you are of really steady hand, you can use something really sharp, a chisel. You could use a box knife, things like that to trim off the edges. But it's really easy to get wavy and get chunks out, where this, because you have this nice solid surface to run along your countertop, it makes it nice and even and doesn't give any of those kind of wavers that your hand might. So that is the main part about how to make a countertop out of laminate. But I want to talk a little bit about how do we take care of these things. So we talked about the fact that water is not this thing's friend, and things like, I'm going to grab my L shape again, this little L shape, because you have a seam, you want to make sure that you don't let any water stand on these seams, because it is possible that water could leak down in between these seams, no matter how tightly you draw up these draw bolts here. So you want to make sure that you don't leave standing water on here. Doesn't mean you can't wash your countertop, doesn't mean you can't wash your seams. It just means if you have a lot of water, you spilled a big glass of water on the countertop, something like that, go ahead and wipe that up right away. You want to make sure that it's not sitting on there for a long time. Generally, you can use just soap and water to wipe these up. I use 409 on my countertops at home. There are special cleaners you can get just for laminate countertops. There's a wonderful wax that has been reissued by now I'm not going to remember the name of the company, but the product is called Jubilee, and it's a wax kind of product that you put on the countertop, gives a little bit more of a shine, makes your countertop a little bit more slidey for whatever you want to put on it. Those are all options. You want to make sure, though, as far as heat resistance, this isn't granite. This isn't a solid surface. This isn't anything like that. So you would never set a hot pot down on here because you would run a good chance of actually burning a mark onto your countertop by setting a hot pot on there. I guess I have always lived in houses that have laminate, so to me this is a no-brainer, but I guess a lot of people nowadays have fancier things at home than I do. So never set a hot pot on this. Also, you never want to cut directly on your countertop. People do it all the time on granite and solid surface. You shouldn't do that either because frankly, that's terrible for your knives. You always want to use a wood cutting board or plastic cutting board in between your knife and your countertop, no matter what kind of countertop you have. And last, you need to be careful if you have a light color like this Sparkle Lamb white, you want to make sure that if you have beet juice or red Kool-Aid or anything that has like a bright dye in it, if you get it on here, it may leave a stain and you may wipe it up and there's a stain there and you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I will tell you that usually if you put a little cleaner on there, 409, or just a little water and soap, it may not come up right away, but over like 2 or 3 days, it's going to eventually come up. If it doesn't come up, one thing that you can do is put down some baking soda, a little bit of dish soap, and just enough of water just to make a poultice. So really a dry but clumpy kind of material, and put that on there. And don't scrub it in because baking soda is abrasive and you don't want to leave scratches in your countertop surface. Just kind of stick it on there with your hands, kind of mold it onto the area that has the stain on it and leave it there for a couple days. And what the baking soda does is it'll draw up whatever has been sitting on top of there. It'll draw the stain up into the baking soda. You may have to repeat it 2 or 3 times, but it is going to come out. I know this sounds like laminate countertops are really finicky and hard to deal with, but they're not, or they wouldn't have been around for as long as they are. Many of you may live in an old house that has laminate countertops in them, and they may still look the same as when they were new. Or you may have had somebody who set a hot pot on it and it has a burn in it. Either way, this stuff is really tough, and we obviously love it here at Make It Mid-Century, or we wouldn't have made it to sell for you all. So that's all I have for the presentation portion of this, but I'm going to be online with you all, and I am ready and able to take your questions.